How's everybody doing? What a great turnout. This is awesome. How many of you were at the earlier talk I gave on just the general program? I guess maybe I should say who wasn't here. Okay, so there's a few. All right, good. So there's been a bunch of people added since then, and some people couldn't make the other ones. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kevin Ahern, and I'm in charge of the program. I'm the guy that's been bugging you with the emails and so forth. And our total count now in the program is up to 84, or actually 85. I think I added one more today. So we're growing. It's going to be a busy summer. What I want to do tonight is something that I used to do with students on the very first session that we had. So there are a couple of you in here who have been in my program before. This is going to be completely repetitious for you, so if you want to leave, you don't need to hang around. These guys will have already heard this before, so if you want to stay, you're welcome to, but you don't need to. Everybody else should hang around, though, because I want to give you some things that's going to save us time in terms of putting your first talk together. All right, so that's really what I'm after here. Okay. To be honest, I'm a little nervous. I mean, giving a presentation on presentations, I've never done that before. And if I screw this up, then I guess this really doesn't bode well for the rest of the summer, right? Because that means if I screw up, then all of your presentations will be screwed up as well. So I don't want to screw this up. I want to get it right. If I don't get this right, I'm in trouble. All right. So what this is, as I said earlier, a set of guidelines that I give to students on the first time that they have a presentation. So this year, I'm not having that first orientation presentation with you. We're going to jump right into that with the second one. I will put a sign-up sheet up for you, as I indicated in the email yesterday, for you to sign up, and I'll put that up tomorrow so you can figure out when you will come with your presentation. Okay, so there are various principles, and these are fairly straightforward things I want to talk about with respect to presentations. So when we think about a presentation, many people, especially if you haven't given one before, get this sort of anxiety and, oh my God, what am I going to talk about? And I've got to memorize everything, and I've got to do all this, I've got to do all that. And the reality is that you don't, okay? So you are welcome to have at your presentation all the notes, anything that you want to have there, okay? So there's not a reason to worry about, am I going to remember this? Am I going to do this right, et cetera, et cetera. You remember that what we're practicing for here, or if you don't remember what I'm going to say, what we're practicing for is a symposium at the end of the summer where each of you is going to stand up and give a 15-minute talk about how you spent your summer vacation, what you did, et cetera, okay? And as I told everybody in the earlier orientation session that I had, even if all you do is break things over the summer, you're still going to have a talk. Okay, so I'll help you to have a talk. This is not about generating information, about curing cancer. This is about learning, okay, and learning how to give a talk. That's really what my aim is for you for this summer. Okay, so the principles I have are we need to be precise in our language. And I've got a thing at the very end of this talk that I'll go through where I'm going to really hit that home pretty hard. It's important as scientists, as engineers, as people who are communicating information to remember that language is what allows us to reproduce things. Language is one of the most important human inventions because thanks to language, and written language in particular, we can pass things on from generation to generation, and we're not left with legendary stories to tell about how to fly an airplane. Okay. Clarity. Clarity is absolutely essential. We can be precise, but if we're precise and all that we do is talk mouthful, mumbo-jumbo, techno stuff, maybe very incredibly precise in what we're saying and make no sense to anybody. So it's important that the things that we say be clear to the people that we are speaking to. That means we need to know our audience, and we need to know the level of understanding that they're going to have. I tell students in the program that the number one thing to think about is assume your audience is a group of freshmen in college. Freshmen in college with little technical knowledge, basic understanding about how the world works, and that's about it. Okay. Visuals. Visuals are important. People get this message in a variety of ways. Okay? Visuals help to tell our story. Written language is important, but a presentation is not about written language. A presentation is about communicating information efficiently and effectively. So if we stand up here and all we do is talk, 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 and in fact, this is going to be a bad example of a presentation because there's no figures in this presentation. All right? Figures help to tell your story. So I want you to be thinking about how you can use figures and how you can design figures in the simplest way for the audience to understand them. And the last thing that I'll talk about is that at the end of what I call the background of your talk, you need to give everybody the framework within which you're working. What are the principles? What is the hypothesis that you're testing? What is the framework within which you're working? All right? You may be doing something that doesn't have a hypothesis, and that's perfectly fine, okay? You may be trying to develop a new method, all right? The audience needs to know what it is that you're trying to do in the talk that you're giving to them. It's very important that they understand that. Okay, so general guidelines. All right, so graphic images help bring the audience to understand. I've already alluded to that one already. Simple graphics and simple presentations are the best, okay? One of the messages that students get with the graphics thing is that they look at PowerPoint and they say, oh, wow, I can make this wiggle around, jiggle around, and blah, blah, blah. And what you will discover if you do that, all right, is that the more wiggly, jiggly, distracting things you have on the screen, the less they're going to be paying attention to you, all right? And they're going to be watching the wiggly, jiggly things on the screen, okay? So it's important to keep that in mind as you're formatting your presentation, all right? You'll notice that I'm putting things up here with basically bullet points, all right? And that's because if I put a whole paragraph up here, I could read that paragraph to you, all right? But when I'm reading a paragraph to you, you're daydreaming, all right? You're not paying attention to what I have to say. So the bullet points are up here to remind me of the things that I want you to understand, and they're there to help guide your thinking as I go through the talk, all right? So the less text I have on the screen, the better in terms of your understanding, all right? Here's one that students have a very difficult time understanding, especially young scientists and engineers. And I know that there are people in here who are not scientists and engineers, and that's good too, okay? But the scientists and engineers take this message home. The very first message they took home when they went into a laboratory was the following, okay? The message was, wow, it's complex. Wow, it is just this mind-boggling array of things that's there. And so when they put together a talk to try to describe what they're working on, they convey that very message. Wow. There's 14,000 numbers that they threw at me the first day, and by golly, I'm going to regurgitate them for people right here. Okay? And there's no reason to do this. You think about what is the take-home message that the audience is going to have for the message that you communicate. And that take-home message is not going to be, was it 3.83 or 3.86? Okay? The take-home message is, this solved this problem. This hypothesis wasn't demonstrated effectively. Okay? These are the messages that people take, not the numbers. Okay. Avoid too much material and methods. Materials and methods information. All right. Now that's really important because it's the same phenomenon. Okay. You learned a technique and you thought, wow, I had to do all these different steps. I had to do all these different things. So the audience, of course, needs to know all these different things as well. The audience needs to understand only as much of what you did as necessary to understand how you got it. Okay? And that turns out to be quite simple. All right? Most of you are going to overshoot this, and that's fine. By the way, this isn't about, I'm going to spank you if you don't do right and so on and so forth. That's not what this is about. But these are guidelines for you. Okay? You're probably going to overshoot this. You're going to give way more information than is necessary for the audience to understand something. You have to keep in mind you've got 15 minutes in which to give your presentation. Okay? And here's a good one. Do not read these slides to the audience, okay? Because they won't smile at you like you're smiling at me right now, all right? I went to a talk at an educational conference about 2 weeks ago in Boston. It was a very, very neat conference. And one of the talks that I went to was entitled How to Revive a Dead Course. Okay? And this talk, I thought, well, people go and they have, bad presentation skills or they don't know how to format something or whatever. So I thought it might be kind of interesting to learn about this. And so I went to this presentation, and this person who did this presentation had, I think, graduated from the school of how not to give a presentation. It was absolutely incredible. And I thought, how to revive a dead course? He's killing people right here with the talk that he's giving, okay? He had these long slides that he read, and he would read literally like this through his slide. Don't do this, don't do that. And you're saying, sir, you're doing this, okay? I pitied the students that took the class from him. So I will try not to do that to you. All right, now, so let's get to the actual talk itself. When you think about the talk, the place where most beginning students trip up is that the first thing they want to do is they want to dive into the technical stuff is the very first thing that they talk about. The very first thing, because again, here's that, this is what hit me when I first saw it, this is what I'm going to give to you. And that's wrong. The first thing that comes out of your mouth for any kind of a talk, whether there's science, non-science, okay, whatever that is, the first thing that should come out of your mouth is, why is your work important? If I don't understand, first of all, why your work is important, I just tuned out for the rest of it. Okay? So relevance may have to do with economics. This disease caused 500 people in Alaska to die of it. Tangible thing I can relate to. This is important. Right? It might have to do with the fact that this ruined crops, okay, and people starved in Pakistan because this happened. Okay? I need to understand why you're doing the work and why your work is important. And yes, you will be working on a little tiny piece of a project that has great big implications. But what I want you to do is step back from your project and find out about that big project that's out there and describe that, because that's where the relevance will come in. In the beginning, give relevance first, all right? If you tell them, and the first thing I think should come out of your mouth is, I'm doing this work, or this is important because, and then you tell them that. Then, after you've gone through some of that, then you can dive into the background necessary, the technical background necessary for the audience to understand. Okay? Big picture. Background should be easy to understand and avoid lingo. Okay? One of the things that every discipline has, it doesn't matter whether it's art, it doesn't matter whether it is science, it doesn't matter whether it's engineering, every discipline has its own language. Part of what you're learning in the training that you have in being a student is learning the lingo of the discipline that you're working in. And what happens to people when they learn lingo is they forget it's lingo. They forget what it was like before they learned that lingo. It's important for you, all right, to remember what people are going to understand about lingo. All right? When you talk about PCR, if you're a molecular biologist, well, you know what that is, but there was a time when you didn't know what PCR was. Okay? So you need to explain to the audience any lingo that you have in your talk so they now are at the same place that you are. Okay? You're doing research to find answers. Okay? This is a very important one, and this is one where your mentors will be very bad. When I ask students, why are you doing this work? One of the things they'll say is, we're trying to prove that such and such is true. Okay? You want to sound like an ignorant idiot, okay? You talk about trying to prove something. Okay? The way investigations are done are not because people are trying to prove something. They're trying to find the truth. That's what scientific inquiry is about. That's what any kind of inquiry is about, is to find the truth. If you say, we are trying to prove this, what you've just said is, we've already decided what the answer is, so now we're going to try to line up everything we can and show that it's true. That's not how investigations are done. Okay? Whether you're working in a criminal law system, whether you're working in a scientific laboratory, or whether you're building the next greatest, latest robot. In the body of your talk, you need to keep descriptions of methods simple, but again, explain them sufficiently so that the audience knows what you've done. This is a very general description. In many cases, I'm going to have to sit down with you and say, okay, we need to perhaps explain more here or perhaps explain less. And that's going to vary a fair amount based on the topic that you have. Oh, what did I just do? Okay. Avoid numbers. Again, I've talked about this before. The more information you give people with respect to numbers. If numbers are really important, if the fact that you measured something and it had a value of 6 instead of a value of 3, and that was really, really critical, okay, then that's okay, all right? But for the most part, the actual numbers aren't going to be very critical in an oral presentation, okay? Here's a biggie. Schematics are important, okay? if you stand up and you say, well, first I added 3.1 molar sodium chloride to a solution that had a pH of 7.3, and then I took this solution and I added my cells to it, and then I spun it in a centrifuge, and then I poured off the supernatant, and then I collected the cells and I put them in a sonicator, all right? Well, that's a whole bunch of words, but a schematic diagram would show solution, okay? It would show that solution getting cells added to it, the next box of a schematic. It would have the box going to a centrifuge, okay? And so it would visually show the things that you're trying to say in words. Okay? So schematics will help. All right. And don't bring up a full text of screen at once. You'll notice that when I talk, I bring up a bullet point at a time. All right? It's very easy to do. And what that does is bringing up a bullet point at a time keeps the audience focused on what you're saying. If I brought up this whole screen at once, what's going to happen? Well, when I'm talking about this point, you're already reading up here, meaning you're not paying attention to me. So by bringing up a bullet point at a time, I can focus your attention on the things that I want you to focus on. Okay. Several things about figures, all right? One of the most common errors is having a graph, and the graph has these little tiny numbers on it that you can't read, or it has a label on it that you can't read. And the audience needs to be able to see those very clearly, even if they're sitting in the back of the room. Okay? The first thing that you need to say about a graph, when you put a graph on the screen, remember this, underline this. The first thing that you say about a graph on the screen isn't, this line went up. Okay? The first thing that you say is, the y-axis has the following numbers plotted. The x-axis has the following numbers plotted. I'm plotting velocity on the y-axis versus substrate concentration on the x-axis. Okay? That is the first thing. Then you can say, as you can see, as the substrate concentration goes up, the velocity increases. Don't say the line went up. Okay? Say what that line going up means. All right. Figures have to be big enough to be easily seen. That's related to the graph axes being visible. And pixelated figures are embarrassing, okay? In this day and age, we have the ability to avoid pixelation. If you don't know how to format a figure properly, see me. I'll be more than happy to help you. Okay, the discussion that you have in your presentation, you need to keep related slides close together. Okay? People's memory doesn't stretch very far. So if you talked about some method that was critical for understanding an experiment that you're doing late in the experiment, and you put it in the materials and methods in the beginning of the experiment, all right, well, you remember it, but the audience is seeing this for the very first time. They're not going to remember it, okay? So help the audience keep related slides close together. There's ways that you can do that. If necessary, duplicate a slide, okay? Take the slide where you showed this and say, okay, now you may remember earlier I talked about this, and you're going to show them the slide again. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Okay? You're talking about work that's been completed. Okay? That's what the symposium is all about. Here's how I spent my summer vacation. You're talking about work that's done. Don't talk about anything in your talk in future tense. You'll find I'm very picky about this. Don't talk about your work in the future tense. I will be doing. And the reason students do that is they think about, I'm going to be showing you this. All right? And so they're talking about that, what they're going to be showing, as if that was the work they're going to be doing, when in fact the work has already been done. The number one rule, avoid future tense. Okay? Talk about things as if it has happened or as if it is currently happening. But don't talk about things in the future. And the reason for doing that is because when you talk about things in the present tense or in the past tense, you sound much more engaged. You've accomplished this if it's in the past tense. You're in the process of doing this if it's in the present tense. But when you talk about things in the future tense, I'm sitting here thinking, so what did you do this summer? Okay? So don't talk about things in the future tense. All right. Phrasing. Be precise. This one I will go on over and over, and your mentor will be the worst offender of this. I go to seminars, and I listen to mentors talk about their work. And the very first thing that comes out of about 90% of the mentors' mouths is, Well, we're looking at DNA replication. Really? Are you doing this to DNA replication? Okay. The image is idiotic. All right? It doesn't say anything. Remember the precision that I talked about? It's important to be precise. Are you investigating? Are you researching? Are you measuring? Are you quantitating? Are you analyzing? Use the word that you mean. The words looking at will not be acceptable. And you're going to say them because you're here. Your mentors say them all the time. And I'll raise my hand and I'll say, no, you're not looking at anything. Okay, what is it that you're doing? And I'll make you tell me. All right? So that's a very common thing that'll come up. All right. Your talk's about your present and past, as I said, not the future. So you're not going to use future tense in your talk. And the other one is passive language. And this is something that young scientists in particular are taught. We're taught to be careful in how we write about something. And we write about it in a passive sense, not in an active sense. Okay? And that carries over many times into the talks that people give. All right? Scientific writing is one style of writing. But that should not carry over into the presentation that you have to give. Okay? The presentation should be much more active, and you should sound much more involved and engaged in your work than you do in the way that you write up your work. Okay, the conclusions that you have, all right? You want to make sure you reiterate the various points that you made. That goes without saying, all right? You want to discuss how the research will move forward. Nobody's going to finish a project this summer. I can guarantee you that. Nobody is going to finish a project this summer. So how the research will move forward when the summer's over, this is the only place in your talk where you should have future tense. Right? It should not appear anywhere else in your talk. And the last thing is always acknowledge the members of your group who helped you, and always acknowledge the funding sources that got you funded. Okay? Very, very important things to have at the very end, and usually it's the very last slide of your talk. All right. Now, I have some things up here that many of you have probably seen before, but many of you will still misuse. So I'm going to run through some misuses of words, okay, that I think it's important. And I'm going to send this out as a document to you as well. These are commonly misused words where one word was used and the wrong word was used because the spell check said that was the way to go, okay? If you rely on spell check as your grammar checker, you're in trouble. So in each case, what I've done is I've done a pair, or in some cases 3 words, and I've written the sentence in the wrong way. Okay? In the wrong way. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead. That's in the next slide. All right. This is another exercise. I'm raving and ranting too much. Okay. This is an exercise where, again, your mentor is going to be an idiot. Okay? The mentor is going to be an idiot. The worst offender of this one are scientists or engineers or others who are talking about, well, you'll see what we're talking about. If I have the word thesis, and it's a singular word, I make it plural. I say theses, right? Because I put an E in there in place of the I, and it becomes theses. Thesis becomes theses. If I have the word hypothesis, and I have more than one hypothesis, it becomes hypotheses, right? If I have the word synthesis, and I've got more than one of them, I have the word syntheses. All makes sense? How about if I have the word recess? Do I have recesses? No. Only an idiot would say recesses because, look, I've got ESS, ESS. When I add an ES to it, up here I had a single S. I've got 2 S's here. So I go from recess to recesses, right? Nobody would say recesses. If I have an excess and I have more than one of them, I have excesses, right? I don't have excesses. Now here's what your mentor is going to say. Process. How do you suppose mentors say process? It says processes. You hear it all the time. It's as stupid as it could possibly be, folks. All right, look at the parallel. Parallel. How does this become processes? It's not, okay? So get out of that bad habit that you will hear your mentor saying frequently, okay? If you want to look smart to your mentor, or perhaps piss them off, I don't know, show them this. I'm going to send this presentation out to you. You can give them this, and they'll go, oh, I never thought about that before. Okay? All right. Now, here's my raving rant about words, commonly misused words. They're written in the wrong way. I love this. I look at Facebook, and I see this all the time. You're an idiot. Okay? Well, the idiot was the person that wrote, you're an idiot. You, okay? Your means it belongs to you. All right. This is a big pet peeve of mine. For anybody, how many people work with DNA in here? Okay, a few. DNA, the strands are complementary to each other. All right? That's what this is. If you use it with an I, it means, gee, you're looking like a nice strand. Okay. I see this one all the time. Okay. They're going to the game. T-H-E-I-R. No, I don't think so. This is one of the most commonly missed ones. If you want to write one down today, this is it right here. Okay? ITS is not possessive. It is not possessive. ITS means it is. Okay? So if you said, I gave the dog, it is collar, it would make no sense, right? Okay? The possessive form of IT is ITS. It's not IT apostrophe S. Okay. Illicit, illicit, right? This is a verb. This is an adjective. Okay? Pour, pour, pour. I'm going to pour or pour this out. I have to confess to you, as I was proofreading my talk before I came here, I had put P-O-U-R right here. So if I have something like this in there, you guys are never going to forgive me. Okay. Dessert versus desert. Okay. I had ice cream for desert. Don't think so. Accept, this one happens all the time too. They wouldn't accept me in their program. Meaning they wanted to leave you out of their program? Principal, principal. Okay? This is the person who's the head of the school. This is an idea or a concept. Okay? Counsel, counsel, that one we don't use an awful lot. Affect, effect. All right? Affect is a noun. Effect can be a noun or a verb. But it's most commonly, I'm sorry, affect is a verb. Effect can be a noun or a verb. Okay? What's that?
No, when you said it,
I said it backwards. No, affect is a verb. Effect can be a noun or a verb. But most commonly, effect is a noun. When you use effect as a verb, it means to bring about. When you use affect as a verb, it means to influence. Okay? So they have different meanings. All right. Course versus course. I took a difficult course at OSU. I don't even want to think about that. This one, oh boy. Loose versus lose. I had a lot to loose. Really? To lose for what? I don't understand. All right. Cite, cite, cite. To. Peek, peek, peek. This one I see all the time. People don't realize this word exists. The spell checker gives them this one. It would pique my interest. Okay. Well, piquing your interest is actually this word right here. Okay. This one, okay. This is one that actually pops up a lot in spoken as well as written. Okay. What's the difference between less or fewer? Okay. There were less than 30 present. What's wrong with that? Okay. Less refers to something other than a number. It refers to a quantity. There is less oxygen in the atmosphere than there is nitrogen. But there are fewer atoms of oxygen than there are atoms of nitrogen. When I compare numbers, I need to use the word fewer. Okay? There were fewer students in here than there are out there. Right? I wouldn't say there are less students in here than there are out there because it wouldn't make any sense. Right? I can only compare numbers if I'm talking about students. Right? But the answer is yes. Okay. Stationary, stationary. Okay. This is the stuff you write on. This is the stuff that doesn't move. Okay. Look at this one. Okay. For some reason, people want to make this a possessive. Okay. Okay. Apostrophe S. Okay. When we're talking about an object or a thing relates to a contraction. Who is? All right. So who is cat is this. Right? Doesn't make any sense. Whose cat is this? Makes more sense. Okay, so a few more no-nos and then I'll shut up. All right is not a word, all right? But two words, all right, are a word, are correct. Anyways is not plural, okay? People say anyways all the time, okay? But the word is anyway, not anyways. Could have. I could have done this. I could have done this, right? Irregardless is not a word, okay? Regardless. And that's what they mean when they say irregardless. Espresso. This is one that's spoken, right? I hear people all the time talk about espresso. I'm going to have some. You hear this all the time. I want some espresso, right? No, you want some espresso, all right? I love this one. Okay, I'm going to go unthaw that thing out of the freezer. Well, unthaw means to freeze, right? Because thaw, when you unthaw something, it means you're freezing it. Okay, and this one you'll see. This is more of a one for written. I find that students love semicolons, and I don't know why. Well, I think I know why, because it allows them to write run-on sentences. But I don't know why people want to write run-on sentences. Right? If you finish a sentence, the appropriate thing to do is put a period, right? And then you move on to the next sentence. Right? Don't try to put things together with semicolons. It's just not a good idea. Okay, final thoughts. Even though I'm harping on you and I'm pounding you on the head here, this is supposed to be fun, and I want you to have fun. I want you to relax. There's nothing that you're going to do that's wrong. Okay? I may correct you here or there, all right, but there's nothing that you're going to do that's wrong. You don't show up to meetings, that's wrong. Then I'll kill you. All right? But if you, as long as you come to meetings and everything, you'll be fine. Okay. Summer experiences, as I said, are for learning. Okay, and so that's why I don't care about the fact that you're not going to cure cancer. You're not going to do all these things. I want you to have a learning experience, and that learning experience may involve things that you learn with the professor that you're working with. That learning experience may be something you learn about giving a talk. That learning experience may be, hey, I don't think I want to do this anymore, and that's fine too. Okay? And data is secondary to learning. All right. The last thing is have fun. All right. Comments, questions? Anybody awake? Yes? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Yes. Yeah. Well, say that for the end of your talk. Okay? I'm working on a project that's part of a bigger problem, and what I'm doing are the following things. Okay, I'll help you with it. I mean, we'll sit down with it. But it does take you sort of rethinking this, because we sort of cling to future tense because it's a way of saying, okay, everything's out here, but it really just sounds like you're not engaged in your work. So come see me. I'll be happy to give you some thoughts. Okay? Yeah. Good question. Metaphors and analogies are good sometimes, and sometimes they tend to trivialize things too much so the audience feels like you're talking down to them. So you have to be careful with them, and that's one of the reasons we have practice sessions. So the sign-up sheet that I'm going to put up is for all of you to meet with me in small groups, and I'm going to hear your talk. And so that's where I'm going to give you that kind of feedback. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a very good analogy. Or perhaps, no, that might not be a good one to do. So that's what the practice talks are for. Yeah. Good questions. Yeah.
For the first meeting, since we're kind of just starting that
Yeah.
research, how far do you want us to go with our presentation?
Yeah. So the talks that we have are just basically talks in progress. So when you're just starting out, the most common thing is, oh my God, I haven't got anything done. Oh my God, I have nothing to talk about. Right? So what I ask you to do in the talks is bring to me. You're going to bring in a PowerPoint or a keynote. You're going to bring a presentation, all right, that describes what you are working on this summer. Okay. So that may be that you're testing or measuring something in blah, 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 and you're hoping to find the answer to whether this is related to some problem that you're seeing over here. Okay. That would be something that you could do. But at the very least, it's going to be about the project that you're working on. In many cases, in fact, in most cases, especially if you're new to working with a professor, you're not going to have anything to talk about for the first time or two that we meet. And that's fine. That is, you're not going to have any new things that you've uncovered. But you all will be able to talk about something about the project that you're working on. And if you're struggling with that, just give me a holler, and I'll be happy to meet with you. Okay? And that's true in general. I'm more than happy to help you in putting together your talk and giving you advice on what to do, what not to do. And I can do that individually with you as well as doing it in a small group. The groups that we'll have will be 8 people each. That works for about a 2-hour session. That's about what that takes to get through an 8. The first one probably won't take quite that long, so I might put 10 in a group for that. But the next one after that we'll do an 8. Yes?
How long
Yeah, good question. I don't have a set thing. The first ones usually go through fairly quickly, and so there's sort of sketches of what's out there, but I don't have a set limit for you. So all I can say is that by the end of the summer, your talk is going to be 15 minutes. And there are, in some cases, students who come to the first talk, and they'll have, oh my God, they'll have a 20-minute presentation on their first talk. And it's like, okay, we got to start, kind of carving this down into a 15-minute talk. So bring something, and you'll be fine. Everybody hungry? Yes. Okay. Thank you all for showing. I'm very pleased with the attendance here. I will post this on YouTube and then so that people can watch it as well. And I will make the presentation available to you. I'll send this out so that you have it and you know what not to say in many cases, right? Okay.